We get a lot of questions.
Training, racing, balancing life, and triathlon. Today we're going to answer some of your most asked questions.
All right, question number one. What is the one thing you wish you knew before your first triathlon?
Of course, after you do your first triathlon, there are so many things that you learn after doing your first triathlon. And you probably think I'm going to mention one of those items. I'm not. What I wish I knew before doing my first triathlon is that how much I would fall in love with the sport. If I had known how well I would exceed in the sport and how much it would provide to me, I would have started this sport years ago. I started this sport when I was 27. And I look at some young athletes getting into the sport now as teenagers. I think to myself, man, how could I have been if I had started younger in life? And also, triathlon, it wasn't just about getting into all three sports. It really brought up the love that I have for cycling. I had no idea that I would fall in love with cycling like I do now. And if it wasn't for triathlon, I would have no idea.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we also grew up in a time and even in a place where, you know, triathlon was this very foreign thing. If you had heard of it all, I think maybe both of us had been exposed to it watching the NBC Ironman coverage, but you know, only in glimpses, not because we were in a community that knew what triathlon was. I mean, as the sport got popular, it kind of came into our community, but yeah, we didn't have that experience younger, and I kind of have the same feeling you do as well. But if someone were to tell me something that I didn't know before my first triathlon, would be where the sport can take you. I would have never imagined that I would go to 4 different world championship races. If I had known that before 2018, that there was that potential, maybe I would have gotten more serious sooner. Maybe I would have tapped into my potential. I feel like I could have been a great triathlete if I had started younger. So
girl, you are a great triathlete. Don't talk like that.
I think there was maybe some missed opportunity, some lost opportunity, you know, when I was really in, I guess, my prime and more of a competitive age. But I wish I could have maybe tapped into that sooner, just kind of like you, just knowing what the potential was in the sport.
Second question, how many hours do you train in a typical week?
Well, right now things are not typical for me. There's been a lot of life and change and transition. So I'll answer that question in 2 different parts. So I guess what would be typical for me right now is that I might be training 7 or 8 hours a week. And that's just, again, juggling life, juggling transition, a new job, and all the things that come with it. So it's been a pretty heavy load, and I've given myself a little bit of room to breathe with that.
As you should. Definitely give yourself the grace, and I think you have, and that makes me happy.
But I also yearn to get back to what normal to me and typical to me feels like.
Fair.
And when we're both training for the 70.3 distance, you know, a given week can be anywhere between 12 and 14 hours. And that sounds like a lot and overwhelming. And it sounds like a lot and overwhelming to me right now. I look at that, I look back and like, how did I do that? And years upon years consistently, aside from a few breaks or race weeks here and there. And I'm like, was that even me? Was I doing that? But I do want to get back to that. I look forward to the time where life settles down a bit, I find that routine again, and I do get back into those 12 and 14 hour training weeks. But right now, typical for me, 7 to 8 hours, just keeping it short, keeping it interesting, and that's my life, and that's the situation I'm in right now.
7 to 8 hours is nothing to brush your shoulders at. I mean, that's still some serious dedication to the sport on top of trying to find your routine in your new employment situation. For me, typical week is, like Tiffany said, anywhere between 10 and 12. They usually range around 11-ish. Now, I will say I will put in an occasional 14-hour week. And I'm grateful for the rest week that comes after that 14-hour week. But having that 14-hour week in there, that just proves to myself that I can do workouts. Not that they're all intense, they just might have some endurance to them. And it proves to myself that, you know, I can put in the distance. And then when we back it off, maybe a couple weeks after that, putting in the 10, 11-hour weeks, that's when the intensity comes in. I know I can do the endurance, and I know I can do the intensity side of things.
Yeah, and definitely, like, I love to see when you get on a roll and you're just crushing the workouts, and I see the gains you've made, and that's really fun for me to watch. And so maybe a little bit I'm living vicariously through you this season, and you know, it brings me a lot of joy too, because I'm writing those training plans and thinking like, what can I throw at her this week? But
She's thrown some things at me, let me tell you.
It's been a fun journey. Even though I'm not racing, I do get a lot of joy out of kind of preparing the training plan and watching you evolve and seeing what you can achieve. And going back to your cycling comment, just seeing how far you've come along in the cycling game in the past year, if not in the past 6 months, and you've really stepped that up. So seeing your training, the hours you put in week in and week out and every single day just about is very rewarding for me. Question number 3. Sometimes life does get in the way. You've maybe got a last minute 7 a.m. meeting that you have to be at in person.
It happens.
What would you consider your go-to workout when you're short on time?
A go-to workout when I'm short on time is pretty much anything but a swim. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter how short, how long a swim is. It always seems to take about 2 hours to get a swim in. By the time you get to the gym, change for the swim, do the swim, shower, get home, it's always an ordeal. So it's not a swim. All that to say, it's not a swim. I would probably say it would probably be a bike ride, because we do 99% of our bike rides in our pain cave on Zwift. So it's an easy hop on, load the workout, get some good intensity in, and in a short amount of time, you can do a really hard, rewarding session in less than an hour's time. We can do it in 40 minutes. By that time, we can hop off, and if I need to get somewhere quick for work, that's usually my go-to.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit of a step further. If I've got an hour, I'll try to combine a bike and a run off the bike, because I feel like, you know, if I can get a little bit of race simulation or get intensity in one or both aspects, then I'm in a good spot. I'll usually do maybe like a 40 or 45 minute ride with some intervals, and then off the bike I'll do a 20-minute run. It's my favorite run off the bike session, which is a 5-minute kind of cruise pace and then a 5-minute very intense, and then you do that 2 times through for 20 minutes, and that'll get the heart rate going, the adrenaline going.
It does.
And you can knock it out in an hour. You can shorten the bike if you need to. So that to me is kind of like a money maker as far as workouts are concerned. You kind of get a good bang for your buck. But I also agree, definitely not a swim, as much as I wish we had a lake connected to our house and I could just jump in and swim some open water laps. That's not the case. So we've got to look at the bike and the run and the things we have available to us.
No endless pool here. Question 4, what is one piece of gear you couldn't do without?
You know, I really had to think about this one. I will say, you know, maybe 5 years ago, I loved all the gear. I wasn't necessarily chasing like the free speed, because obviously it's not free, but I'm a tech person and I'm a gear person. I just like it for the functionality and, you know, learning what things do and how they can help me. But I'm gonna take a little bit of a twist because I feel like I can manage, aside from the things you essentially need for triathlon.
Sure.
I like a good pair of fun socks. I don't know why. I only wear socks on the run, but I just like something that's bright, colorful, bold. I feel like that's our personality on the race course. I've gotten a lot of comments on the socks that I wear in races, and that's fun. I mean, whether it just kind of sparks conversation with your fellow competitors or just makes you feel good because you look good, you know, it's just a fun little quirky thing. I think, you know, as far as the gear is concerned, I could take it or leave it at this point in my career, but I think, just looking good and feeling good, that makes me enjoy the moment.
I can agree with you on the socks. When we're in a race, we do wear fun socks, and like Tiffany, I get comments on my socks, people running up behind me, cool socks, love your socks, and it's just a good little pick-me-up. And I will go along with that. You probably think, we're attached to our watches, we want to know all the data. Honestly, if my watch was dead the morning of, so be it. I think the one piece of gear that I couldn't do without would be a running hat. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this hair is cray-cray sometimes, and I want to cover this up. And also, we do a lot of hot races, and we live in Austin, Texas. It's hot here. Even on training runs, I will put some water or some ice in my hat, just like I do on race day. And without a hat, I couldn't have that cooling factor for me.
So you're saying you don't want to run with the full mane?
I don't, sorry. Okay. I gotta cover this up.
That's okay. I like your hat.
It's a pretty good hat.
All right, I think one more question for now. Number 5, last question. How do you stay motivated in the off season?
What's off season? What is that?
Yeah.
For so many years in a row, we have stacked quite a few races. This is probably the first year where we haven't had more than 3 races in one season, which it feels kind of odd. Mm-hmm. So prior to this year, it seemed like we were in a perpetual state of racing. And so we would prepare for a race, the race would come, we would have a down week, maybe 2 weeks, but typically not. And then we'd get right back into a flow of training. So there really wasn't an off season for us, and it worked for us. It was fine, it was great. This year, this year's been a little bit different, but I do still have that fire and drive, and so that's what keeps me motivated to maybe not necessarily wake up and do a swim, bike, run, but do something active, something physical, something that makes me feel good. Because once the training for swim, bike, run does come, I want to be ready to go, and I don't want to have to start over from a building stage. I want to kind of, start back up from where I left, not have to backtrack a little bit. So just staying moving, just going out and doing what feels good in the moment, because I know I want to get back at it hard and strong and fast, and just continue to raise the level for myself.
I know we've had a few years prior to 2018 where we did reinvent the wheel every single year.
It was horrible too.
I mean, and from September to January, we probably didn't even get on the bike, but I'm glad that we're not in that phase anymore. I like the idea of continuing to, stay moving and do something, and, things are a little bit different, but I've also kind of reframed my mind that I want to look at the process, not the end result, because right now racing isn't on my calendar, so I don't have that race, that carrot that's dangling, but I have to look at what can I do today, what can I do to take steps a little bit closer to get to the bigger goals, and that's, smaller goals within a week. Okay, I want to do 4 swims this week, or I want to get out the door and do 3 runs, and I want to build up my run volume. So looking at small goals along the way, because sometimes the big picture and something maybe that's so far away is really hard to comprehend, but you got to take it, day by day, week by week, and celebrate the wins as you go along in the process, because it's more than just a time on the clock at the end of the race. It's all the little victories that you stack, everything that you build up to get to the finish line. That's the win, and race day is the celebration. So find the little things that keep you motivated and inspired, but also don't be afraid to back off when it's time to back off, when you need that space for yourself, because you can bury yourself really easy. And I think I did that kind of at the beginning of this year when I was trying to balance looking for a job and training and, wanting to crush every single workout. And finally I had to just step back, take a deep breath, and realize that this year is just gonna be different.
And that is okay. Life is different as you go through the years, and you just gotta know how to evolve with it.
And I think we've done a pretty decent job.
I think so.
But I'll be ready to get back to racing.
I'll be ready to have you next to me.
Whenever that time is. So.
We hope this answered some of your questions, but if you do have more questions, drop them in the comments. And if you like this format, let us know.
Yeah, should we do more Q&As? We are totally open to share our experience and our love and passion for triathlon to help you be a better triathlete and learn more about the sport. And if you're here, go ahead and subscribe, like, and we'll see you next week.